Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I want to thank you guys all for tuning into the show tonight. We do have a good show for you tonight. We're going to be covering a lot of NFL draft-heavy topics. First off, we're going to talk about the teams who I believe need to get the NFL draft right the most. We're also going to talk a little bit about some of my continued mock draft that we started in last night's episode. We're going to dive more into that. And make sure you stick around for later in the show where we will be talking some college football. We're going to get into the UCLA season preview. And, of course, there's a big addition with UCLA getting Nico Yamaleva from Tennessee. So we're going to talk about that and how that impacts them going forward in this coming season. So before we start, though, I do want to ask that you guys like and follow the show as always. If you have a question or a comment that you want to add to the show, definitely do that. Your input is a big part of what makes this show great in the first place, and all of your support and any kind of comment or question is greatly appreciated. So whether it is a quick comment or a thoughtful question or just an opinion that you want to share, don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. Now, if you want to make absolutely sure that your message stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that. Just use the $ at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's a great way to support the channel as well. We rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content that you guys love, and we appreciate every bit of your support. So go ahead, let us know what you're thinking. Hit that super chat button, and let's keep this show interactive and exciting. And if you prefer, you can go to the GSMC Sports.net website to tip, donate, and leave a comment or a question there. We couldn't do what we do without you guys' amazing support, and we're thankful to have you guys as part of our community. And once again, that website is GSMCsports.net if you want to tip, donate, or leave a question or a comment down there. So let's go ahead and get into the first segment of our show here tonight. We're going to be talking about NFL draft heavy things going forward this week. And I do, just before I start my show here, I just wanted to make you guys aware that on Thursday, draft night, I will be collaborating with another GSMC host over from the Down by Contact Sports show, Jeremy Lapidus. He does great work over there. If you have not seen any of the work that he does, definitely go check that out. But me and him will be doing a live stream of the NFL draft on Thursday, starting at 7:30 Eastern time. So definitely check that out. I'm excited to get into that with Jeremy. I'm sure he'll have some interesting opinions as well. So just wanted to throw that out there before we go ahead and get into the show. So let's dive on in. So the teams that I think need to nail the draft, we're going to start off with the first team that I think that needs to nail this draft, and that is the New York Giants. And, of course, the Giants will be picking in the top 3 of the NFL draft, picking 3rd, of course. So them, along with the Titans and the Browns, have been talked about a lot over the course of the last few weeks or so. There are talks that maybe the Giants could potentially trade out of that spot. I know the Browns have also been talking about that. That has just been a recent development in this whole draft situation here. But I think the Giants really do need to get this draft right, no matter where they end up picking. Just because if you take a look at their situation, their owner is John Mara is not necessarily happy with how the show or how the Giants have been really doing business. And there is the thought that maybe the head coach and GM, Brian Daboll and Joe Shane, respectively, could be on the hot seat and could end up be out of New York at the end of this coming season if they have another season sort of like they have been having in the past few years or so. So I think the Giants have a ton of pressure on them to make sure that they get this draft right. They've done a relatively good job in free agency in the offseason. They brought in 2 quarterbacks to refill that room after Daniel Jones left and Drew Lock left, of course, as well. But I'm bringing in Russell Wilson to be the starter, and then Jameis Winston will back him up. That is an upgrade over what they had last year, so the offense should at least be a little bit better. But we'll see how it translates in that division that, of course, is always going to be competitive. But the Giants, they really do need to get this draft right because, if they don't, there's going to be a lot of jobs on the line if they have another pretty subpar season, to put it lightly. So that's why I have the Giants there. So the other team that I have, and this is in, no real particular order in terms of, who most needs to get it right and who most or least needs to get it right. This is just a list of teams that I think need to get it right in the draft this year. So on Thursday, of course. But number 2 I have as the Titans. And, of course, a lot of people talking about them drafting Cam Ward, and that is pretty much a lock, about as close to a lock as you can get with the NFL draft. Most everybody thinks that Cam Ward is going to the Titans there, but I think that they do need to nail this draft all together anyway, not just with that first pick. Obviously, you want to nail the first pick, especially if it's a quarterback, because he could potentially be your guy going forward, your franchise guy. So you definitely want to get that right, of course. But just overall, the Titans need to get this right, because one thing that I have mentioned several times when previewing different teams throughout the course of this offseason is that the Titans, they have a brand new GM. And this GM did not bring in Brian Callahan to the Tennessee Titans. So if they have kind of a down year, or say maybe the draft pick doesn't necessarily work out this year, then you could be seeing Callahan on the outs in Tennessee. And they don't want to have another year in which it requires them to have the number 1 overall pick the next year. So, losing way more games than they win. You don't want to have a year like that consistently, and the Titans definitely don't want to fall into that trap, as they've had a few down years over the past couple of years here. But the Titans I have there as being under pressure to get this right. But the other team I have here on the list is the Saints. And the Saints, this just comes with the recent news about Derek Carr, about how he has this shoulder injury that he may require surgery on. So there is a question as to whether or not he's going to be available for this coming season. So that kind of makes this draft that much more important than it already was, because the thing about the Saints is that the Saints don't have a great cap situation. They didn't coming into this offseason. So really they kind of had to make sure that the draft is where they get most of their talent, because they can't afford to really bring in anybody that's going to be of high value, because they're going to have to pay them. Now with the draft, at least you can get guys on rookie contracts and still be able to upgrade your team potentially, depending on how you do in the draft and who you pick. People were talking that the Saints might go ahead and take a quarterback. Shedeur Sanders has been linked there, but I have also heard that Jackson Dart is another guy that they really, really like. I don't know if they're going to take him with the 9th overall pick, but if he falls to the 2nd round, or maybe falls to later in the 1st round, maybe you look at the Saints as a possible trade back candidate. A lot of things can happen just depending on how certain picks fall, or how certain players fall, I should say. That could kind of alter what some teams are willing to do and willing to give up to move up or move around in the draft. So I have the Saints there because they have a whole new coaching staff as well. So they want to get this draft right. They don't want to, they're already getting started on kind of a rocky sort of situation, having their starting quarterback unsure if he's going to be able to play coming this season. So now you're going to start thinking about, what do we do at quarterback? You don't want to bring in a guy like Kirk Cousins, because you're going to have to pay him a good chunk of money to eat some of that salary cap that Atlanta doesn't want to eat. So that's going to be a complicated situation, one in which the Saints can't really afford that. So that's not going to happen. So you have to figure that maybe they attack the draft somehow. Maybe they get a quarterback in the later rounds instead of the 1st round. But either way, they need to get this draft right, just so they can go ahead and get moving forward in this, post Drew Brees era that they really are still in. They haven't really gotten to that level of competitiveness since Drew Brees retired. So they've cycled through a couple coaches since Sean Payton as well. So hopefully now with their, Kellen Moore hiring, maybe that can be just a solid foundation to where they can continue to, grow and maybe be better. But they need to get the draft right first of all. But going forward, the next team on this list I have is the Dallas Cowboys. And the Cowboys always talked about in the media, and rightfully so, because they're one of the more popular franchises in all of sports, not just in football. But there's always the talk about Jerry Jones and how he has been saying the Cowboys are going all in over the past year or so, and they haven't really done much in free agency, both last offseason and so far in this offseason. They haven't done a whole lot. So you got to think that the draft is probably going to be where it's at for the Cowboys to make their move and try and improve this team. Now, I have mocked running backs to them over the course of this offseason. I do think that that's what they're going to go with that first pick. So we'll see if that's what they do, but they need to do something. They need to get this draft right, because they can't have another year like they did last year when, I know Dak Prescott got hurt, but they weren't playing very well even when he was healthy and playing. So they need to have a bounce back year, and it starts in the draft, in my opinion. So moving on to the final team on this list here, I have the San Francisco 49ers. And the 49ers, I think, have to get this draft right. And they luckily have been able to do that over the past few years or so. Look at their quarterback, Brock Purdy, has led them to a Super Bowl. Not a win or anything, but led them to a Super Bowl appearance. And he was the very last player picked in the NFL draft a few years ago. So they're able to find these guys later on in rounds and stuff like that. So they have a good front office. I don't think that they're going to have a bad draft or anything, but you have to also consider all of the players that they have lost this offseason. They need to have a good draft in order to kind of fill some of those holes that were left by some of the players that left in free agency. So I have the 49ers here as one of the teams that needs to get it right, of course, this coming season. So that's my list. I just have those 5 teams that I think most need to get it right and nail this draft to hopefully change their outlooks going forward. So that is the list that I have here. So when we come back, we're just going to take another quick break here. When we come back, we're going to dive into the mock draft that I started last night, and we're going to finish it off here tonight in the next few segments. So stick with us. We'll be right back right after this first break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, guys, welcome back to the show, GSMC Football Podcast here. Once again, I am your host, Matthew Quinn, and we're going to dive on into the second segment here. But before we do, I just want to remind you guys that if you have any questions, any comments, anything that you want to contribute to the show, definitely hit up the Super Chat over on GSMCSports.net as well. If you want to leave a tip, donation, or just a question or a comment, you can go ahead and do that over there. So definitely do that. Super Chat, once again, if you want to contribute to the show in any way. So let's go ahead and get moving here on the next segment of the show. I'm going to do my mock draft here, mock draft 2.0. We did one a little bit earlier in the off season, so we're just continuing that, finishing it off here just a couple of days before the NFL draft on Thursday. So starting off at number 16. The pick that I have, of course, is the Arizona Cardinals, and I have them taking edge Jalen Walker from Georgia. And I have them taking Walker just simply because they do need to shore up that pass rush and that defensive line. Now, they went and they got Josh Sweat in the offseason, so that definitely upgrades the line. the interior of the line, but they still need some edge rusher help as well. And adding Jalen Walker, I think, would be a good move for the Cardinals. And, of course, you get the guy on a rookie contract because of the way a lot of these edge rushers are getting paid nowadays. You're going to have to eventually pay these, talented edge rushers a crazy amount of money. If you take a look at just what Myles Garrett was able to get this offseason. So getting a talented player on a rookie deal, you got to make the most out of those players for as long as you can before you have to, pay them that really, really big contract. So Jalen Walker has the potential to be one of those guys that ends up, making those crazy, crazy contracts because of how talented he is. And the Cardinals could really use a guy like that on the edge to not only help stuff the run, but to, of course, get to the quarterback as well. So the Cardinals, I think, are just a few pieces away from at least getting into the playoffs. So I think Jalen Walker would be a good step towards shoring up that defense. They've got a couple of good guys already on offense with James Conner is one of the more underrated running backs in the league. And Kyler Murray has talent, although we haven't quite seen him get to the level that, most people kind of thought that he would get to at this point of his career. But he has dealt with injuries and things like that as well. But they need to build up the offensive line or the offense as a whole because they have Marvin Harrison Jr. They did just re-sign Greg Dortch, but maybe they want to go and try and get a receiver at some point in the draft as well. But at least for this first round, I think they're going to go Jalen Walker from Georgia. So moving on to the next pick is the Cincinnati Bengals at 17. And I have them taking safety Malachi Starks out of Georgia. And I like what I've seen from Starks in college and just a few games that I was, able to watch, being an SEC fan and all that. But the Bengals definitely need some help in the secondary. Their secondary was one of the worst in the NFL last year. Their defense as a whole was one of the worst in the NFL last year. They're still dealing with issues with contract negotiations with Trey Hendrickson along that defensive line. So their hope is that they can get him signed. And, of course, Sam Hubbard retired this offseason too, so that is another hole that they're going to probably have to address at some point in the draft. But this is a pretty deep defensive line draft class, so I think that they can go after a guy like Malachi Starks to really attack the desperate need that they have at the secondary just to try and get that team back to being competitive defensively because that offense is already there. They just need a defense that's going to be able to hold it down for a few different series instead of just giving up 30, 40 points every single game and making the offense have to match that or get better just to get a chance to win the game. But Malachi Starks would be a good young safety to put in that secondary for the Cincinnati Bengals. So I like that pick there. So moving on to number 18, the Seattle Seahawks. I have them taking wide receiver Luther Burden III out of Missouri. And this, of course, coming after the acquisition of Sam Darnold in the offseason at quarterback. And Geno Smith, of course, is now gone to the Raiders. So a whole different quarterback room there. At wide receiver, there are some holes. They still have Jackson Smith and Jigba as their main number one receiver, but they lost DK Metcalf via trade with the Steelers. And, of course, Tyler Lockett was released as well. So they need some depth pieces on the wide receiver position. And Luther Burden III is a very, very good receiver. He is one of the top receivers in this draft class. Can do a lot of different things. Can go up and get those contested catches. He's a very good route runner. He's elusive, can play in the slot and on the outside. So he's got all those, things that you want in a wide receiver. And I think he would fit well in the Seahawks system that they run there. So I like Luther Burden III for Seattle. And there's also other questions that Seattle has. I mean, I know offensive line could be something that they address as well with this pick instead of a wide receiver. Running back, they've still got Zach Charbonnet as well. So, as well as some other guy, Kyle Walker III, I believe he is still there as well. So maybe they don't necessarily go running back or anything like that. So I think Luther Burden would be a good option for them, even though running back is a pretty deep class, but I don't think the Seahawks would go after anybody like that. And the GM, as I kind of talked about in last night's episode, has talked about potentially not ruling out drafting a quarterback at some point in this draft, and obviously it's just not going to be in round 1 because they don't really have that desperate of a need for a quarterback to draft with the 18th pick. So he just was talking about, just at some point in the draft. Most likely, I think if the Seahawks were to draft a quarterback at any point in this draft, it's probably going to be on the final day of the draft, I would imagine. Can't imagine they're going to spend a high pick on a quarterback after just signing Sam Darnold. But then again, the Atlanta Falcons drafted Michael Penix in the top 10 after giving Kirk Cousins hundreds of millions of dollars too. So anything can happen, I guess. But I just have the Seahawks taking Luther Burden there. That addresses a pretty big need that they have on offense, especially with a new quarterback coming in. So you want to just try and continue to build a rapport with a new receiver set, and they have a talented guy already in Jackson Smith and Jigba. So Luther Burden pairing with him would be a good duo for the Seahawks, I believe. So moving on, number 19, the Bucks. I have them taking Jihad Campbell from Alabama, and this, of course, addresses a pretty big need that the Bucks have along that defensive front there. And Campbell has shown that he has all of the tools that you want in a linebacker. He has all the physical tools, and he's got the speed and the tackling ability and the vision and the smarts to be able to kind of recognize plays and, jump snaps and things like that. So, and he's good in coverage as well. So the Bucks are definitely in need of that position, and I think they address it right there with the Alabama product, Jihad Campbell. So moving on to the final pick in this segment, that's going to be the Denver Broncos. And I think they take a running back here, no matter who it is. I think it's a running back, but I have them taking Dylan Sampson from Tennessee. And I could also see them taking Quinshon Judkins or DJ Giddens as well. Could be an option as well. But it also is going to just kind of depend on the running backs that are taken before the Broncos select, because, of course, a lot of conversation has been made about Ashton Genty. There's even teams that are talking about trading up to try and, snag him because he's that talented. Then, of course, you've got Amarian Hampton, and you've got Cam Scatterbo out there too. So a lot of good running backs to choose from. So I think Dylan Sampson would be a good match for the Broncos. They, of course, just let go of Javonte Williams, having him go to the Dallas Cowboys, who are also in need of a running back as well, despite the fact that they still went ahead and got Williams from Denver. But the Broncos are clearly in need for that. There was a talk that they would need tight end, but they ended up addressing that by getting Evan Ingram over from Jacksonville. So now that kind of moves the need down to needing a running back or possibly another receiver to pair with Courtland Sutton. But I don't think they go receiver here. I think running back is more of a need than wide receiver is for this team, especially the way it's run as well. So, and they've got, Evan Ingram as a tight end who can also operate sort of like a receiver as well. So Broncos would be, in their best interest if they take a running back here, and, plenty of good running backs to choose from. And I like Dylan Sampson here at number 20 for the Broncos. So that's it for that segment. When we come back, we're going to dive into the picks 21 through 25, and we're going to see where all of this, shakes out on Thursday. See if all of my picks or, most of my picks are wrong or right, so it'll be interesting to kind of see that too. But we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get into some more of this mock draft. So stick with us, and we'll be right back right after this.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show here. We're going to dive right into the next segment here, and we're going to continue our mock draft, starting with pick number 21, and that, of course, is the Pittsburgh Steelers. And as we have mentioned plenty of times on this show, that is, of course, the team that I am a fan of. And with the Steelers, there's been a lot of talk in regards to what they're going to do with the draft. I mean, of course, they're in the market for needing a quarterback. That's been the most talked about position in the offseason for the Steelers. Don't know if they go quarterback here. They have been linked to a number of different guys throughout this whole process. There's Jackson Dart that they've been linked to. There's, of course, Shedeur Sanders they've recently been linked to. But I personally have them taking defensive tackle Derek Harmon from Oregon. I think this addresses a need that is more prevalent this year, because I do believe that the Steelers believe that they can get a quarterback or just, somebody that they could potentially have grow into someone at some point in this coming draft. But I think it's going to be maybe in the second or third round. They have been talking about the expressed interest to possibly trade back. The one team that I could kind of see them trading with would be a team like the Bills, because the Bills are all the way down at number 30. So that would be a pretty good jump for the Bills to get up to 21. So you could possibly finagle a way to get a second-round pick out of that as well, depending on what else you offer. If you may have to offer some future picks as well to get that second-round pick. But I know they want to get back into the second round at some point. So maybe that's where they take their quarterback, in my opinion. But I don't think they take quarterback in the first round with the 21st pick. I think they go Derek Harmon to shore up that defensive line there, because they lost Larry Ogunjobi to free agency this offseason. Keanu Benton is still there, but he is still kind of developing. They still haven't seen what they want to see from him yet. This is going to be a very important year for him coming forward. And then, of course, you've got Cam Hayward, who is still an all-pro, still playing at an all-pro level, but he is also getting up there in age, so you don't know how many of those all-pro years you're going to have left with Cam Hayward. Not one to doubt Cam, or anything like that, but, age is definitely a factor. Father Time is undefeated, as they say. So they're going to have to try and eventually look at trying to get younger at that position and trying to look forward into the future at that position, something that they did not do when Ben Roethlisberger was nearing the end of his career. So they can't make that same mistake on defense. So I think they go defensive tackle here. There's a number of guys that they could potentially go, depending on how the draft shakes out before that. I know that they could potentially maybe trade up a few spots. I don't think that they will trade up ultimately, but if they do, I think it's only going to be a couple of spots, maybe to pick number 18 or 19 or something like that. I don't think they go any further than that. I think they're more likely to trade back than trade ahead. So we'll see what they end up doing for the draft here in a couple days. But I have them going Derek Harmon at number 21 out of Oregon. So moving on to number 22, I have the Chargers, and they are going, in my opinion, defensive tackle as well, and this is Kenneth Grant from Michigan. And this is another pick that you could kind of flip-flop between the Steelers and Chargers, in my opinion. I think you could see the Steelers taking Kenneth Grant as well, and the Chargers taking Derek Harmon. Either one of those two players could go to either one of these teams, so it's kind of up in the air, kind of a flip-flop, in my opinion, for those two teams there. But the Chargers need some depth on that defensive line. Obviously, losing Bosa in the free agency. They did re-sign Khalil Mack, but he's, of course, another player that's getting up there in age. So you may see them maybe possibly consider an edge rusher as opposed to a defensive tackle, but the defensive line still needs some depth help as well. So I like Kenneth Grant here, and he is a tremendous player as well, so they would be getting a quality player right there at number 22, as most of these defensive linemen are in this class anyway. So moving on to number 23, I have the Packers here, and I have them taking James Pierce, the edge rusher out of Tennessee, who really impressed in the Combine. He was one of the better performing players on the Combine. He was definitely be one of the fastest edge rushers at his position during the combine. Ran a pretty significant 40, but the Packers, of course, need several different positions, but edge rusher is definitely a position of need. You could also make the argument that they could maybe go wide receiver here because of the questions surrounding Christian Watson with his injury from last year. They're expecting him to possibly miss some time this year. They're not sure exactly how much, but with that being kind of up in the air, you might consider the Packers possibly wanting to go receiver here. And I could definitely see it. There's a number of guys out there that I could see them going to. But overall, I think edge rusher, with this point, you just got to kind of, when you're at this point in the draft, I think you kind of just have to pick the best player available in certain situations, because you're starting to get towards the teams that are like the playoff teams that for the most part have quarterbacks in place and things like that. So, you really want to get best player available, unless it's a major hole that you have on your team that you need to fill. Then, of course, I, understand that. But I've always been kind of the proponent of getting the best player available. Maybe that's just being a fan of the Steelers, because that's typically how they handle the draft. They don't necessarily go based on, positions of need. They go based on, best player available usually, but it, of course caters towards some of their needs in, some cases. But, yeah, so I have the Packers taking James Pierce here. I think that would be a good addition to that defensive line. So moving forward to number 24 at the Minnesota Vikings, and I have them shoring up their offensive line a little bit for their young quarterback. He's not a rookie, I guess, but he would technically be a rookie being in this, being his first regular season starts that he'll be seeing, and J.J. McCarthy, of course, who I'm talking about here. But I have the Vikings taking Tyler Booker, the guard from Alabama, to help kind of protect that, investment that they had last year in that draft pick with J.J. McCarthy. McCarthy didn't get a chance to play in the regular season as he had that meniscus tear in the preseason. So, of course, that started the whole Sam Darnold story. Sam Darnold leads the Vikings to a 14-win season, but they get bounced in the first round of the playoffs. So then he ends up going to Seattle, and then, there's the rumors surrounding the Vikings and Aaron Rodgers. Vikings have said that they are committed to J.J. McCarthy, and it definitely does seem that way at this point. So I don't think it's anything like they're going to, trade J.J. McCarthy or something on draft day or anything like that. Nothing crazy like that. I think they roll with J.J. McCarthy, and then they want to upgrade that offensive line by getting Tyler Booker, and I think that would be a good pickup for them as well. So moving on to the last team that's in this segment here, I have the Houston Texans, and I have them trying to rebound off of what I think was a pretty big mistake in letting go of Laramie Tunsil. I have them taking Armand Membu from Missouri, the tackle. I think that would be a good way to kind of ease the minds a little bit of Houston Texans fans, because I really did not agree with that trade that they made with Washington this offseason that sent Laramie Tunsil to the Commanders for relatively nothing, really. I mean, this guy was a Pro Bowl tight end, or not tight end, Pro Bowl offensive tackle, and they kind of just let him walk. So didn't really understand why they did that, but this would go a long way into kind of repairing some of that from this past offseason. So getting Armand Membu, a very talented young tackle from Missouri, I think would be a good step in the right direction for Houston. They need to protect C.J. Stroud, because that was one of the problems they had last year, was offensive line issues, and then they went ahead and they got rid of their best offensive lineman in the offseason. So maybe they're trying to just completely revamp that offensive line, but they're going to need to start doing it now, and they're going to need to start investing some more first-round picks into getting offensive line support. So Armand Membu would be a good, solid pickup for them, I think. So that's who I have them going at number 25. So those are the picks for 21 through 25. When we come back from our next break, we're going to dive into the rest of the draft. We're going to do 26 through 32, rest of the first round, I should say, 26 through 32. So stick with us. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back, and we're going to finish our mock draft here. So stick with us. We'll be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. We're going to get into the last part of our mock draft here. We're going to try and fly through this as quickly as we can since there's more than just 5 picks per segment like I was doing before. We've got several more picks than that. So we're going to do 26 through 32. We're going to start, of course, at number 26. And I have the Rams selecting safety Nick Emenwari from South Carolina. I think that would be a good pick for them. They need to shore up that secondary as well. They, of course, were not able to get Akilla Witherspoon still back there, so they're going to need to shore up the secondary a little bit. And I've even heard, I think there's a little, I don't think there's much truth to this, but I've even heard that the Rams could be one of those candidates that could maybe trade back because they could potentially snag a wide receiver in the second round, I've heard, or possibly the thing that I did not really believe was the acquisition of a quarterback at some point in this draft. But maybe they do it in the later rounds. I just don't think they're going to do it in the early rounds, especially not after getting Matt Stafford locked down. But I heard that somewhere, and I just thought it was kind of crazy that they would, consider a quarterback in the first round. I just don't buy that at all. But now trading back to the second round and possibly taking a receiver there, that's an interesting one that I heard. Just because, of course, they have Puka Nacua, they have Devontae Adams now. A second round pick is pretty high when you just signed Devontae Adams and you already have a pretty solid wide receiver in Puka Nacua as well. I think you want to wait till a little bit later in the draft to take a receiver if you're the Rams. So I think safety would be the best bet just because that secondary does need additional help as well. But the Rams are one of those teams that are just a few players away from competing for a potential, Super Bowl appearance. They took the Eagles, who eventually won the Super Bowl, of course, last year. They took the Eagles all the way down to the wire in a Snow Bowl in Philadelphia in the playoffs last year. So they've proven, that they can get there and they know how to get there. They've got a Super Bowl quarterback, Matthew Stafford, Super Bowl winning head coach as well, and Sean McVay. So they've got all the pieces there, and they've got a pretty solid defense overall. So shoring up the secondary will just make that defense that much better, and I think that'll make them even more competitive coming forward this year. So we'll see as we move forward. But on the next pick is number 27. I have the Baltimore Ravens taking edge rusher Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. Now, the Ravens are never really shy about taking defensive players. Typically, whenever I watch the draft, I typically always remember seeing or usually typically see the Ravens taking some really solid defensive player that not many people kind of expected them to take, but then he ends up being a Pro Bowler. That's just kind of what the Ravens do with their defense. But, of course, having Dean Pease there in the building to help develop those young guys definitely helps as well. But the Ravens, of course, they have a lot of good players on that defense. Some guys in the, secondary as well who are also very good. Kyle Hamilton, very good safety. Of course, Marlon Humphrey, very good corner. They've got, of course, all those guys, Roquan Smith on the middle of the defense there on the linebacker position. So I would not be surprised if they go edge rusher here. And that's the one kind of area that they were really kind of lacking last year. At the beginning of the year, they struggled to stop a lot of big plays, but you could tell that once Dean Peace was brought back in, that defense got better and better as the season progressed. But there still are some holes that they need to address on that defense, and I think edge rusher is definitely one of them. And they could take a number of guys here. That's another position that's pretty deep this year. But Shamar Stewart, I think, would be a solid pickup for the Baltimore Ravens. Moving forward to the Detroit Lions at number 28, I have them also taking an edge rusher. This one is Michael Williams out of Georgia. I think that would be a solid pickup for them. They, of course, are looking for some edge rusher depth across Aiden Hutchinson. Of course, he's coming off of the injury that he had last year. He should be ready to go by week 1 and all of that. But they definitely want to get some depth on that defense, especially with how ravaged they were by injuries last year. They want to absolutely make sure that they have enough depth to cover any particular losses that might come during the course of the regular season in terms of injury. So Michael Williams is a solid edge rusher, and I think that the Lions would be best bet to go ahead and address that position. I know corner was another position of need that they had with Carlton Davis leaving in free agency, so that's another position to kind of watch out for. But first round, I like the Lions to take Michael Williams out of Georgia. So moving on, I have the Commanders taking edge rusher Donovan Ezeruwaku from Boston College. He has been talked about a lot in this position group, and he's definitely one of the better edge rushers in the draft this season here, or this upcoming draft. And the Commanders definitely need some help along the defensive line. They struggled mightily to stop the run at times last year, and Donovan would be a pretty solid run stopper as well. He was pretty solid at Boston College, and he can also, of course, get to the passer. But the Commanders need as much help on the defensive side as they can get. They have added some pieces via free agency, but the offense is pretty much set. They're talented enough. We saw how good they can be with Jaden Daniels and all those weapons, and they added a couple weapons as well, getting Deebo Samuel for the receiver room. But they need some help on defense. That is where they were at their weakest, was against the run. Their secondary was pretty decent for the most part last year. Of course, they went ahead and they got Marshawn Lattimore, but he was hurt when he was acquired, so he didn't really get into the games until towards the end of last year, and he didn't make that much of an impact when he was in there. So he's probably still going to be back this year, so you got to think maybe they address corner at some point in the draft, but I think with that first pick, they've got to address the front seven in some way to try and help navigate the issues that they had last year when it came to stopping the run. So getting Donovan out of Boston College, I think, would be a good step in that direction. So moving forward to the Buffalo Bills, they are picking at number 30, and I have the Bills taking corner Will Johnson out of Michigan. And Will Johnson has been talked about by a number of different outlets. Whether you want to call them experts or not is up to you, but some people saying that he is one of the best corners, if not the best corner in the draft, outside, of course, of Travis Hunter and his, ability to play those multiple positions. And of course, Jahdae Barron is another guy that was talked about very, very highly in corners this year. But Will Johnson is up there as well as one of the best prospects, and the Bills need some help along the secondary as well. That's probably their biggest need, really. They did have a need for edge rusher, but they went ahead and they got Bosa from the Chargers, so that kind of filled that need a little bit. Von Miller situation still going on there too, so we'll have to see what the Bills ultimately end up doing. But I like them taking Will Johnson from Michigan here. We'll have to see if I end up being right about this, because the Bills, I think they've been mocked for several different corners, so not necessarily Will Johnson. Trevor Amos was one that I saw a lot of when I was, doing some research earlier on. But I like Will Johnson here. Maxwell Hairston is another one that just kind of is up there. He's that speedy, type of corner that you want. He ran the fastest 40 amongst all the corners this past season, or this past combine, I should say. So actually, I think he was the fastest amongst all players in general with his 40. So that could be another guy that they could potentially target there. So moving on to number 31, the Kansas City Chiefs, and I have them taking defensive tackle Kenneth Grant out of Michigan. Now, this is, of course, under the impression that he's still available, because he's a very good defensive tackle. So it's very possible that he may not even be there when the Chiefs select at 31. But if he is there, then I think the Chiefs go ahead and they take him. They want somebody to pair along with Chris Jones on that defensive line. Their defense was very good last year overall. So they look to try and kind of continue that. They do need to do some things on offense to kind of have things run a little bit more smoothly than they did at times last year. I mean, I know they were AFC champions and they, won 15 games and all that, but there were many times throughout the course of the season where their offense did not necessarily look great and the defense had to bail them out a lot. So I think the Chiefs wanting to get as much depth behind Chris Jones as possible is a good and smart thing to do, just because, with Chris Jones and that offense kind of struggling at times, the defense is going to be on the field a little bit longer than what they're accustomed to with those Chiefs. And I think the Chiefs might be a little bit worse this year. It's kind of hard to really even say that, because I still don't think that they're going to be a terrible team or anything. I think they're probably still going to win the division, but I think that they might take a little bit of a step back this year. We saw some cracks in the armor last year, despite the fact that they did get to the Super Bowl. But especially in that Super Bowl matchup, you saw a lot of issues in which they were unable to protect Patrick Mahomes. So that's an issue as well. I mean, they also lost Joe Thuney in the offseason to the Bears, so maybe they go offensive lineman as well here. I think that could be an option as well. But Kenneth Grant, I think, is best player available at that point, so you got to take him if he's available there if you're the Chiefs. That would be a pretty monstrous interior defensive line if they can have Chris Jones and Kenneth Grant there, depending on what formation they decide to run, of course, too, with Steve Spagnuolo's defense. But moving forward, final pick of this segment here, final pick of the first round, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Super Bowl champions, of course. They have most notably lost a lot of guys on defense and along that front seven. They lost Milton Williams, the big defensive tackle, to the New England Patriots. So in that respect, I have the Eagles taking defensive tackle here with the 32nd pick. I have them taking Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State. I know that they have a penchant for building through the trenches, and they have lost some players on the trenches and on that front seven. So they definitely want to continue to rebuild that. That's how the Eagles are so successful, is because they can beat you on both sides of the ball in the trenches. So having Tyleik Williams there, I think would be a very, very good pickup for the Philadelphia Eagles. So moving forward, that is it for the first round of the draft. We've got the draft coming up in, of course, a couple of days. So we'll see how all of these plan out. But we'll see. I like what I've kind of put together here for mock drafts. I think a lot of them do make sense, but I can see a lot of different things, a lot of different outcomes, coming out, of course. It depends on really how the rest of the draft shakes out. So it's going to be fun, though. Like I said, you guys, if you want to tune in to our live draft show on Thursday starting at 7:30, definitely do that. And we will cover a lot of all of these guys, and some of these guys that might go and some of these guys that might not even go in the first round. So it'll be fun to see, though, but definitely stick with us there on Thursday. Look out for that show. But we're going to take another quick break. This will be the last break of the show. When we come back, we're going to dive into some college football, talk about UCLA a little bit, and, of course, their acquisition of Tennessee quarterback Nico Yamaleva. So stick with us, and we're going to talk about that and some season outlooks for UCLA as well. So stick with us. We'll be right back right after this break. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. We're on the final segment of the show tonight, and then we'll let you guys go and enjoy the rest of your night. But we're going to talk about some college football here. We're going to talk about UCLA, And, of course, the big story with the UCLA in the recent days is the acquisition of the former Tennessee quarterback, Nico Yamalieva. And, of course, he had his dispute with the NIL situation over at Tennessee, and that eventually just caused him to transfer over to UCLA. And UCLA actually had a quarterback in the building, Joey Aguilar, who transferred to Tennessee from UCLA. So kind of like a player swap, really, is what they were able to do. But this definitely upgrades the UCLA quarterback room. He, of course, is a 5-star recruit in Nico, that is. At Tennessee, he was a little bit inconsistent in his first year as the starter. So there are some concerns there, but he is the number one transfer prospect that was out there that entered the transfer portal. So they were able to get that along with a pretty strong transfer portal class to begin with. So, UCLA should potentially have a better year this year. I mean, last year they had a 5-7 record. They had a pretty bad year overall under the first-year head coach Foster. So Deshaun Foster, So he's looking to bounce back, looking to have a better season this year. Of course, that was their first season in the Big Ten since departing the Pac-12 conference, so did not go the way they wanted it to. They had a strong strength of schedule, which played a big part of it, and they could not get much offensively, which also was a big part of why they struggled in most games. They only scored 30 points one time throughout the course of the season, and that was against Rutgers. So they have a lot of issues on offense that they are hoping that the acquisition of Nico can possibly upgrade. And it should, because their quarterback room will be much better this year than it was a year ago. Whether or not his, promising play that he had at Tennessee for the few appearances that he was there, whether or not that translates over to UCLA, only time will tell in regards to that. But they struggled really to score in the red zone throughout the course of the season as well. And just their inability to put up points at a consistent manner definitely contributed to that 5-7 record. They have a pretty tough schedule this year as well. They have a few really tough games. They've got Ohio State, of course, is always going to be tough. Penn State is one of the teams that is favorites to win a national title, or at least compete for one this coming season. Then, of course, they have Indiana, who is also an up-and-coming team who had a much better year this past year than they have had in recent years. And then, of course, they have the game against USC, who they have actually lost 3 straight times against. So those games are all going to be tough. And with the whole USC game, that's going to be an interesting game this year with Nico Yamalieva there. So we'll see if he can kind of turn that offense around a little bit. But we'll see. He transferred in, of course. That's been the big story, transferring over after the NIL dispute with Tennessee. So really the whole timeline of what happened. Aguilar, anyway, ends up striking a deal Monday afternoon to sign with Tennessee, and then he is going to replace Nico. So right in that same time frame, right before that, you had Nico skip spring practice on Saturday, and then a couple of days after that, he is listed on the transfer portal, and then he is, of course, taken by UCLA. And then the Joey Aguilar movement happens, and he goes over to Tennessee. And he's most likely going to be a starter there, too, just like Nico's going to probably be the starter here in UCLA. But there was a whole drama there in Knoxville that it's now, thankfully it is over. But there was a lot of money that was left on the table by Nico as well. So that's just something that was kind of unfortunate for him. But UCLA, they're a big winner in this whole situation because they get a 5-star recruit at quarterback now, and they can look to try and build around him and maybe get some better performances out of their offense going forward. So last year, if you take a look at just his numbers, Nico, he threw for 2,600 yards, just over 2,600 yards, 19 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and it's pretty inconsistent throughout the course of the year, but there were some flashes of some really good play there and some promising, ability there as well. But they ranked number 12 in the SEC last year in passing offense. They only had about 221 yards per game. They did end up getting to 10 wins for the second time in 3 seasons, and that was the first time that had happened in 20 years. So that is definitely, he has definitely helped Tennessee kind of bounce back and get into these conversations of, college football playoffs and things like that. So UCLA is hoping that he can do the same thing with them and get them back to those conversations of being, way back when they were, a little bit better in the Pac-12. They're hoping to try and get back to some sort of glory here in the Big Ten. But the Big Ten is definitely one of the toughest conferences in all of college football. Some might argue it is the toughest conference, and overtaking the SEC, which was considered the toughest conference for a long time. So, Nico was going really from the SEC to the Big Ten. So it's, definitely a step up, but not by much, because they're both just as equally, talented, for conferences. But the Big Ten, I do think, is a little bit better. So we'll see how he responds in the Big Ten, as opposed to the SEC. But that's enough for quarterback. So at the running back position, the starting running back this year will be the returning redshirt senior Jalen Berger. He has experience, and he's working his way into 8 games in the 2024 season. He got some pretty decent carries for the most part. Had a game-high 13 carries for 43 yards in the Bruins season finale win against Fresno State. So Anthony Frias is another guy that is going to be returning as well. He is a redshirt junior. They have Carson Cox coming in. He is a 4-star 2025 signee. So that's a guy that you got to be excited about if you are UCLA as well. At wide receiver, they have a few returning players. Quasi Gilmer, he's a promising sophomore. He's probably going to be looking to build on a pretty decent freshman season. Titus Mokiao Atamala, he's a returning senior. He's going to be a key veteran presence along that wide receiver room as well. Xavier Staples, returning senior as well. Rico Flores, a junior, and he's returning. Grant Gray, Carter Shaw, both sophomores with potential to develop. So those are all guys that are returning from a year ago. They have a couple of new additions. They have Mikey Matthews, who's a transfer coming in. So he is another guy that's pretty highly rated. He's a speedy receiver. So we'll see if he can bring his strong work ethic to help boost the position as well. Shane Rosenthal is another highly rated prospect who comes in via transfer and adds depth to the receiver room as well. So their overall outlook in the receiver room is pretty solid, I think. It's pretty promising. It's a mix of experienced veterans and some promising young talents. So if they can just focus on development and depth, I think the Bruins could have a pretty strong receiving core this coming season. I do think that they're going to be better than they were last season. They were 5-7 last year. Just adding Nico to that lineup in general will make that team better. He'll be able to make enough plays, I think, to be able to get them away with maybe about 7 possible wins this coming season. I don't think that they're going to be college football playoff bound or anything like that. Not this year. Whether or not Nico decides to return for another season after this year, that's going to be another question as well when we near the end of this coming season, but we'll address that when we come to it. But so that's UCLA. I think that they're going to go about 7 wins this coming season. So we'll see if I am right or completely way off, as I have been, several times before. So I hope you guys did enjoy the show. That is going to do it. Like I said, just to remind you guys again that if you guys want to catch the live show on Thursday, is going to be during the NFL draft. We will be starting at 7:30. That is myself and Jeremy Lapidus, the host of the Down by Contact Sports show right here on the GSMC Sports Network as well. So we'll be doing a dual hosting thing and covering the NFL draft and the picks as they happen, as they come in. We'll talk about them, and we'll make some predictions about what we think might happen and things like that. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to do, and I'm excited to get going on it. So definitely keep your eyes peeled for that. Again, that's going to be on Thursday night. That's the draft night, and that's going to start at 7:30. The NFL draft itself starts at 8. So if you want to follow along when the draft starts, you can do that, or you can join us for a half-hour little preview we have before the draft kicks off. So starting at 7:30, so definitely check that out. And check out some of Jeremy's work too. He is very, very good, very knowledgeable with his shows as well. So definitely check him out if you get the chance to. So that's going to do it for the show. Once again, I want to thank you guys all for joining me and for, putting up with all of this draft nonsense. Now that we're so close to actually being there, we can actually start talking about what teams have done, and we can start analyzing what people's draft grades are and all that. So that's going to be fun and exciting to get into. But again, thank you guys for tuning in to the GSMC Football Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. Really does make a difference, and we also invite you to follow us on all the social medias and Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all those social medias for more content and updates. I thank you guys once again for tuning in, and you guys have a wonderful night, and we'll see you again, same time, same place tomorrow night.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn ain't that